Been more done for land since Landcare was started than there's most likely ever been done, especially in the Lexton area. There's been a power of work done there, you know, for salinity, soil erosion, fencing off gullies and trees and reclaiming salt areas and that.
I'm first tonight too.
I think, Julie, instead of sending letters out to the whole area, to everyone in the group, put it in the newsletter, and then everyone will know that we're going to have a campaign, and then later on to just target a couple of areas perhaps, sort of, you know, south and perhaps down this creek.
There's two types of salinity. We get what's called regional, which is coming from a very large area where it will actually come out almost in a face on a level because the water will stay at a level. And then a lot of the stuff we get in our streams here, which is just local, like it comes out where it's got a weakness in the ground, it finds its way out in a single spring.
Salt and soil compaction seem to go hand in hand. No rainwater or fresh water can actually penetrate it. So you wind up with a crust on your ground for the first probably couple of inches. It's virtually impenetrable with the rain, and it has an increasing amount of salt on it because the only water it's getting is coming from underneath.
So we've gone through and ripped this all with a dozer to allow the rain to actually get into it and push the salty water back down so you can actually get a plant to establish. And the plant we've used here is what's called tall wheatgrass, which is an American plant, but it's basically quite salt tolerant.
In 1970, when we bought this property, all the salt was on this side of the fence, and we tried to prevent it from getting larger by growing tall wheatgrass, which we didn't have any success with. The salt has just slowly moved this way, and it's killed the big trees, but we've tried to fence it out and do some salt prevention works here. We've tried to grow trees, but that hasn't been successful. It's been too salty.
We'll slowly from the edges just start pushing the salt back in and pushing the water back in and eventually get this all revegetated, I hope. Most of the challenge of fixing salt is not where the salt is. With some of our hills, probably anything up to 5 kilometres away from actually where the salt is discharging is where we've actually got to do the work, because the work is all not about salt, it's all about water. And where you've got a hill, and you have a high hill like that and a low land, you put water in on the hill, water creates pressure, of course, a hydraulic pressure. And you've got to take that pressure off to stop the salt getting pushed up down on the low country.
When the department first put the test bores in, they were ground level and the water ran out on one of them. And then they put about 5 or 6 feet on that, above the ground level, and it'll come up right up to the top of that. But it hasn't since we put this tall wheatgrass and cleaned the creek out. Yeah.
This was bare salt, and so there's a bit of fog and all that through there, and tall wheatgrass doesn't seem to take off on good country. Yeah. Like you couldn't just sow your whole farm with this tall wheatgrass. Yeah. Just, there's a lot better pastures.
Do you get a lot of that dag stuff?
Yeah, but you know, wool's been that cheap and that's not worth selling, so we just chuck it out on the salt. Sort of nearly a mulch too, it holds the water.
So you come along and just find a spare swap?
Yeah, just chuck it out.
With that tree planting on the top of the recharge area, although we haven't got the salinity in our place, people across the road have got it, and I mean, if we don't care for the neighbour, there's not much point in anybody doing anything. But I mean, it's really a neighbour thing as much as your own pride in your own property.
A lot of that steep country should never have been cleared. And no good blaming the farmers, because the conditions were then the government made you clear so much a year. If you didn't, the government took it back.
Every time that they broke the land up and the big pastoral runs into smaller holdings, they had to fence them. And of course that drove a lot of the actual clearing of the big trees and fence posts. The rain could actually channel and get force and get momentum. And you put on top of that a few rabbits and a few rabbit burrows, and that basically is what just started this process off. What happens with the force of water is, of course, the water just actually cuts away in underneath it, and of course as it cuts under the bank just slides. So really most of this stuff happened in the probably 20s and 30s, and the gullies were quite pronounced from then on, and now all they've done is kept working back out on the sides.
You could drive through in a two-wheel drive ute, and then all of a sudden it just started moving, and that's when we knew we had to do something about it. So we had to put a weir in to get the water from up the top down to the bottom of the erosion. We got a backhoe in and dug a big trench through here, filled the bags up with cement and gravel and stacked them in to make a weir to hold the water back, and planted cane grass around it to try and hold the ground together. And since we've fenced it off and kept the stock out, there's been a little bit of regeneration.
The key thing is about getting the water off this area so the water's not running in over that edge. So better pasture up there that stops the runoff, then getting some banks in place that'll actually put the water through a few specific spots, so we've got a dam or something to stop the force, and then take the bit of topsoil off and actually push all those over, and then knocking that over and then getting that into a nice even edge that we can actually plant something on. And that's really the whole thing, is to actually be able to try and get some vegetation established, because the gullying we've seen, where you've got the sheer walls and just all subsoil, you just can't grow anything on it. And vegetation is really what can stabilise it and hold it in place. What you've got here is what we've tried to do in most cases, plant things that are native to the actual spot. So you've mainly got red gums and blackwood wattles. Just in front of us there we've got a tea tree, which are all reasonably salt tolerant plants and can handle that little bit of salt. Once they get up and we get a bit of grass on this, that'll keep the water down and that won't become an issue. If you actually put every single little gully we had together, there was 150 kilometres of gullies. Now we would reckon now 10 years on that we've probably done 80% of these top areas, the very, very top areas. And in doing that, we've probably taken out half or three quarters of that, because a lot of it is the little gullies that run in. So we've made a really, really major impact in this first 10 years.
This is where the gully was. We went for a K up, and it had a fork. We've got some levee banks put in as well, so we really looked after it. We didn't let sheep on it for 5 years or 6 years or something, so that the trees could get a bit established in the pasture and sort of held together. The sheep go in and out of there now. It's a good shelter at shearing time, really. So we're really pleased about that.
Most of the farmers around this area were what Dad classed as once a year rabbiters, right, which meant poison program. Oh shit, that time of year again we've got to do the poisoning. Yeah. Run around with their trails, take the sheep off, put a trail wherever. Educated rabbits won't take the poison. By the end of October, there was that many rabbits that your sheep would die if you didn't take them out. We had to take them down the front and actually hand feed them down on the flats. It would have been close to 1,000 acres done in the first real major hit against the rabbits with the rabbit buster money. If you haven't got a roof over your head, what do? You've got to head for shelter of some sort. And that's the same as a rabbit. I mean, if they haven't got a hole to go into or a log to crawl up in, they're not going to stay there. He pushed it out with the dozer blade, and as he was pushing it out, there was bloody rabbits coming out, one after the other, until he just pushed a bit of dirt over the hole. And then we got down and we ripped it all, and the stench, there must have been, I don't know, hundreds of rabbits in it. Yeah. And the stench was phenomenal for weeks after that. Yeah. And he always used to come back, and every day he'd come back, he'd have to go back to that one place because the rabbits would be working from the top, trying to get down into where the main network of burrows was. You'd think you'd be digging a rabbit burrow out here, and all of a sudden there'd be a big hole drop down.
There's one underneath.
And he'd go back underneath. Yeah. And that's what I said about losing the foxy. You could hear the dog down underneath barking, you'd be dug right over the top, thinking, well, where the hell is she? So you'd have to sort of find the hole, then you'd go back and listen and start again. Yeah. And you just sort of pull it back. And because it's so steep, when you're digging, you can dig into it, and it used to come away in a wall. And that was our aim as a Landcare at that stage, was to clean the harbour up and clean your burrows up. And if you've done that with the virus intact as well, that you shouldn't have a lot of problems with rabbits so long as you continue your maintenance with it.
The whole purpose for bringing blue gums onto the farm here, apart from there's certainly an economic reason, is that this land's very, very diverse. You've got basically volcanic plain, and there's a lot of areas that are very, very wet, and in the winter time you can barely grow pasture. And the blue gums to me were the really optimum land use to have here, because they'll draw that water down and they'll actually make the place productive.
And this has made a big difference to this paddock actually, because originally you could never drive along here in the winter because it was always too wet, but the trees certainly have taken the moisture out of the ground.
The stock find it, you see them camped here a lot, so that they're taking advantage of the shelter. When the trees have finished their cycle, we're either going to have wood or fence posts or something like that. I think the pasture actually is helped too with trees, because it alters the climate. It lifts it in the cold weather by perhaps a degree or two, and you seem to get more feed grow in the paddock. The warmer they are, the less feed they need to build up body heat.
I've got a little black wallaby living in here, and there's echidnas in the trees behind us that I'm sure moving around through here as well. That's where the challenge is for me as a farmer with a real interest in the biodiversity of the farm. Is blue gums are great as a crop, but that's all they are. They're a crop like growing wheat. They just grow them for 10 years instead of one. So I think 100 acres out of 200 will be heaps of blue gums, and I'll go into things that are then more biodiverse.
Landcare had some down the shed, so I thought, I wasn't getting a lot of money then, so I thought, if I get a bit of spare time, well, it's probably not a bad idea to collect some, and it's going towards a good thing, it's Trans Australia, so I was in it for a bit of money and also for the good cause. Just looking at the tree seed here on the blue mallet, these are your pods here, and what I usually do is I cut it there or something like that, take that off, put that in the back of your ute, then take it in there to the shed, put it on the ground. I left it for about a week to dry out, then you just hit it onto the ground, it all falls on your tarp, you push it into the middle, and then I put it on top of a big bucket, and I've got shade cloth, and then the shade cloth sieves it through.
We've had weed strategies drawn up in our land care groups. We've had a lot of good work done with spraying, but there's still a power of it to do. It's pretty hard to get the people to do it where it's on the road. Some of them don't do it in their paddocks either, but some of them say, it's not my responsibility on the road, because that's the law. I absolutely hate it. It's a prickly thing. It's very bad for fires. The heat's something awful in it. If you get a fire in it in the summertime, you can't get near it to put it out or control it or anything. And bad for rabbits, vermin, foxes live in it. It is fairly easy to kill with spray, providing you spray it and keep spraying it. It's hardly fair for the people that have done it over the years and kept their places free, and then the neighbour next door through the fence has got it everywhere, And it causes a lot of unrest in a community when that sort of thing happens.
And that then creates a situation where you've got to make a community work together. You've got to convince a person that their work is actually going to help somebody else, and you've got to convince people that they've actually got to go and help somebody else for their own benefit. And that's really one of the fundamental tenets of land care, is that what's important for the community as opposed to what's important for the individual in terms of what we do in the district.